The invitation had seemed harmless enough at first, a formal dinner aboard the Royal Starcruiser Aurora's Embrace. As a newly promoted diplomat for the Terran Confederation, I had been instructed to attend without complaint. Flattery, I knew, was the currency of court politics, and the Queen of the Ciliari, renowned across 3 star systems for her strategic brilliance and merciless cunning, had a reputation that preceded her. Naturally, I was feeling mischievous. The dining hall was a spectacle of luxury and power. Polished obsidian floors reflected the soft luminescence of bioluminescent chandeliers, and the walls displayed holographic tapestries of the Ciliari Empire's greatest conquests. At the far end of the table, elevated on a dais of crystal and gold, sat the queen herself, Serafina Vera, known to her people as the Shadow of the Stars. She radiated authority even in repose, her posture flawless, her gaze cold and calculating. I took my seat among the diplomats from various systems, swirling the wine in my glass as I observed the grand display. As the conversation drifted into political formalities, I could feel the tension in the room, the unspoken rules of etiquette and subservience that governed every movement, every word. And that's when I let my mouth betray me. "Oh, come now," I said, a half-smile tugging at my lips. "Does the Queen really expect us to be impressed by floating lights and fancy food? I've seen better dinners on mining colonies, with less risk of being vaporized if I sneeze at the wrong time." The room froze. Diplomats' eyes darted nervously toward the dais. Conversations halted mid-sentence. A fork clattered to the floor somewhere behind me. I could almost hear the collective intake of breath, like the vacuum of space itself had entered the hall. I laughed lightly, waving off the tension. I'm kidding, of course. But honestly, it does seem a little over the top, doesn't it? The laughter I had hoped to coax from my peers didn't come. Instead, there was a heavy silence, suffocating and expectant. I thought my charm could save me, but then I felt it, a presence. Cold, deliberate, impossible to ignore. I turned, or tried to, but the realization hit me like a gravitic surge. She was behind me. Queen Serafina Vera herself, her expression unreadable, yet terrifying in its subtlety. She hadn't moved. I hadn't noticed her rise from her seat. And now, she was there, so close I could feel the weight of her authority pressing into my spine. "You mock me," she said, her voice calm, almost melodic, but with an edge that could slice steel. "In my hall, in my presence. Tell me, diplomat, do you know what that makes you?" I swallowed, words failing me. My mind scrambled through every piece of advice I had been given about dealing with royalty. I didn't mean... "Meaning is irrelevant," she interrupted, circling me slowly. Every step she took echoed in the hall, even though the floor was designed to absorb sound. "Intent does not erase consequence. You have offended not just me, but every system represented here tonight." And yet, she paused, tilting her head, scrutinizing me. "You are still breathing. Curious." The Queen's guards shifted subtly, but made no move. That subtle restraint was more terrifying than immediate violence. I realized, with a knot forming in my stomach, that I had no escape. None. Every exit was controlled, every angle covered. I was trapped, and my arrogance had led me here. I apologize, Your Majesty," I stammered, voice trembling. It was ill-timed humor. I meant no disrespect. Her lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile. "Humor is dangerous, diplomat, but it is also illuminating. You reveal much about yourself in a single careless statement. Fearlessness or foolishness. Pride or desperation." I couldn't answer. My mind was a storm, adrenaline flooding my veins. She stopped circling, standing directly in front of me. so close I could feel her breath. You will dine with me now, privately. Alone. Follow me. I followed, my legs feeling like lead, my thoughts racing. The private dining chamber was small, intimate, and unexpectedly warm. The decor was minimal, but the air seemed charged with unspoken power. She gestured for me to sit. I could have had you arrested, executed even, she said, taking her seat opposite me. And yet I am curious. Most fear me into obedience. You, she leaned forward, eyes piercing mine. You mock me, and still you survive. Why? I paused, searching for a plausible answer, any explanation that wouldn't get me killed. Perhaps I underestimated you, or overestimated my own courage. Perhaps, she said softly, almost contemplatively. Then her gaze hardened. Or perhaps you have a mind worth studying, a mind unafraid of the truth. Truth. That word caught me off guard. I'm not sure what you mean. I mean, she said, lowering her voice to a whisper that nonetheless carried an edge of command, that most humans cower in the presence of the Ciliari. They speak with honeyed tones, hide their thoughts, and swallow their pride. You, however, speak freely. You mock. You challenge. And you survive. That is rare. I leaned back, trying to keep calm. So, you're not going to kill me? She considered the question. Then she laughed softly, a sound both melodic and dangerous. Kill you? No. Not yet. You might be useful. Her meaning wasn't clear, but I sensed it was important. Useful how? To teach. To observe. To test, she replied, leaning back in her chair, studying me like one studies an experiment that has unexpectedly become sentient. The galaxy is vast, diplomat. I cannot control everything, anticipate everything. Some things must be provoked to reveal themselves. You have provoked me, and now you shall serve a purpose beyond mere survival. I realized then that my life had shifted in an instant. What had begun as arrogance, as a careless joke, had transformed into something far more intricate, a challenge, an invitation, a test. And I had no choice but to accept. Over the following weeks, my life became a delicate balance of politics, strategy, and survival. I dined with the Queen often, each encounter a carefully orchestrated game of intellect and will. She would question me on Terran strategy, interstellar diplomacy, and human psychology, while I learned the rhythms of her empire, her tactics, and the quiet, unyielding strength that made her feared and respected across star systems. And slowly, a strange bond formed. Not affection, not trust, not yet, but understanding, recognition. The sense that beneath her icy exterior lay a mind that valued intelligence, honesty, and audacity above subservience. Then came the night that tested everything. We were in the War Council chamber, reviewing data from a border skirmish near the Gliese 581 system. Tensions were high, factions ready to spark conflict at the slightest provocation. I had been advising on the human diplomatic approach, but one Ciliari commander, arrogant and obstinate, challenged every recommendation I made. I responded in kind, mocking the commander's assumptions and pointing out flaws in their strategy. Laughter rippled through the room, some nervous, some amused, but all eyes turned to the Queen as she stood, silent, observing. When my words ended, she was beside me, closer than anyone had ever dared to stand, even in the hall of dining. Her eyes were fixed on mine. "Do you understand now?" she said softly. Every word, every jest, every challenge meant something. Not just to you, to the galaxy. "Yes, Your Majesty," I said, realizing the depth of her meaning. "I understand." She smiled faintly, almost imperceptibly, and placed her hand on my shoulder. "Then you may yet survive. Not because of luck, not because of fear, but because you are necessary." And in that moment I understood. Mocking the Queen had been foolish, dangerous, reckless. But it had also revealed a truth I could not have discovered otherwise, that power is not just enforced by fear, but by perception, intellect, and courage. And sometimes, survival comes not from submission, but from daring to stand your ground, even in the face of absolute authority. The lessons continued, the games of intellect and survival unfolding across weeks, months, and light years. I learned to navigate the Ciliari court, their politics, and their subtleties. I became indispensable, not because I bowed, but because I dared to challenge, to speak, to question, and the Queen, in her brilliance, recognized the rare quality of one unafraid to test her limits. Eventually, I realized the truth. I was no longer merely a diplomat, a visitor in her court. I had become a partner in the Empire's survival, a confidant in strategies that spanned star systems. And though the memory of my first foolish joke lingered, I smiled whenever I remembered the moment it all began. Because it had begun with arrogance, yes, but it had survived, transformed, and endured. And in that endurance, I found something far greater than fear or flattery. Understanding, respect, and a bond forged not through obedience, but through courage. As I stood beside the Queen one evening, watching the stars stretch beyond the hall's transparent walls, I whispered softly, almost to myself, "I never thought mocking you could lead to this." She glanced at me, eyes glinting with amusement and approval.
"Few do," she said.
"Few dare." And in the quiet of the galaxy, I realized daring had saved me. And perhaps, in a strange, inexplicable way, mocking the Queen had been the first step toward survival, and toward something far greater than I had ever imagined.